Hi and welcome. Today I want to show you how to make a patch which sounds a bit like the beginning of the Fixes track Deeper and Deeper from the 1984 soundtrack of the movie Streets of Fire, by the way, with Willem Dafoe. It is the successor of the Fixes album Reach the Beach from 1983, which I full-heartedly recommend because it contains a lot of PPG sounds. It's quite complicated to replicate or rebuild this patch with just a Blofeld, especially because I think normally you would need more arpeggiator or sequencer steps, especially to create this ratchet type of sound, which you can hear only in a few bars of the whole sequence. But we can try to build our patch more creatively with a heavy use of modulations and modifiers. So be prepared for that. Okay, let's start with the programming, which is going to be a bit complicated today. Let's start with a complete new patch. And we are going to use my beloved Clipper wavetable 14 for both oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. Let's reduce the octave to 16 foot and reduce the pulse width to 0. And we're going to modulate the wavetable position with the filter envelope with maximum amount. And the same for oscillator 2, this time with octave being 32 foot. Again with the Clipper wavetable. Oh yeah, that sounds already pretty much like the patch. Again, pulse width to 0. And the filter envelope as the modulation source. To add more harshness to the wavetables, you can increase the brilliance parameter. Oh, that's almost hurting. Oh yeah. And this patch can be monophonic, so let's go to the oscillator configurations, change the allocation to monophonic. Now let's go to the filter section and use the PPG type, of course, because the original sound is also a PPG type. Decrease the cutoff to 25, increase the resonance to 30. And naturally, we have to modulate the cutoff with the filter envelope, let's say with 26 or 25. We can choose 25 and change the filter envelope with a slower decay and more release time, as well as the amp envelope with a release of 70. You can already hear the basic sound. Later we're going to modulate the cutoff and get a huge variation within the sound. I say that we can directly go to the Arpeggiator section because all the modulations are a bit complicated to understand, and I think it will be easier when we start with the Arpeggiator. So let's go to the amp section first. We don't need velocity, everything is played by the Arpeggiator. And we can activate the Arpeggiator with a clocking of 132, which means that 1 32nd notes are played. The BPMs are around 110, I think, and the pattern is a user pattern. Let me show you this pattern. So all first 4 notes are active, and then only the first note of every section. Just like this. And that's what you can hear. And you can hear the problem, because the ratchet is fast enough. The ratchet itself is correct, but it appears too often. So I want to have the ratchet, then only single notes, and then after a while again the ratchet. That's how the original patch in the song Deeper and Deeper sounds. And that's exactly where we are going to need our modulation sources and modulation slots and modifiers. So let's go on. Let's start with the LFOs. The LFOs are all square type, or not all, but LFO1 and LFO2 are square. They are clocked, and the speed of the first LFO is a half note. The starting phase is 180. Just like this. And the second oscillator is also a square type, also clocked with the speed of 1/4, which is a quarter note. And here the starting phase is again 180. And the third LFO can remain a sine type, but it is also clocked with the speed of 1/4 dotted. And here we can change the start phase to 33. At this point, you cannot hear any modulation. We didn't add this modulation sources to our patch. But now we are going to use these values very creatively, especially in combination with our modifiers, to derive a signal which is going to control the loudness of our oscillators. The goal is to keep the ratchet on in the first go, and then to mute the ratchet part or time section in the next two plays of the Arpeggiator. So the Arpeggiator plays, you can hear the ratchet and the notes. Then in the next go, you cannot hear the ratchet and only the following notes. Then again, you cannot hear the ratchet and the following notes are normally loud. And then again, you can hear the ratchet. And we can do that by combining all the modulation sources, all the LFOs, creating modifier outputs, which are going to control the loudness of our oscillators. Sounds complicated, and that means we should have a look on the modifier simulator. Let's start with the configuration of our three main modulation sources, LFO 1, 2, and 3. LFO 1 was a square type, which was clocked and had the starting phase 140 degrees. 180 degrees, of course, sorry. That's what you can see here. Our second LFO, or sorry, let's change the speed to 1/2. The second LFO was also a square type. It was also clocked. It had the speed 1/4 and the starting phase 180 degrees. At this moment, you cannot really see the second LFO, so let me show you the second LFO as well and adjust the zoom range. So these are all two LFOs. And then the third LFO, which was also clocked, but this time with 1/4 dotted and a starting phase of 33. And let's turn it on. And here you can see it's a sine wave. And now what we want to achieve is that we want to keep the ratchet on in the beginning and then turn it off for a few times and then turn it on again. But the following notes after the ratchet should be active. Let's go back to our arpeggiator. So you can see the ratchet here in the beginning and the three following notes. I always want to hear these three notes, but the ratchet should appear only sometimes. So I want to derive a modulation signal which can turn on the ratchet sometimes, then be active, then be off and active, off and active, and then again active and active. And that's what we're going to build with our modifiers. So let's go back to the software and let's configure our modifiers. In modifier 1, I'm using LFO 1 and LFO 2, but with the maximum setting. The resulting signal is this one. So we have LFO 1 and LFO 2, and the result is this. Okay, so we have a low signal followed by a high signal. And again, a low signal followed by a high signal. This whole section from here, from the beginning to the end of the high section, that's one play or one go of the arpeggiator from the first note to the 16th note. Okay? Because that's how we have set our speed configuration. So that's the output of modifier 1. Now let's go to modifier 2. This is using modifier 1 as data 1 input and LFO 3 as the second data input, and again the maximum operation to derive a signal. So we are using modifier 1 and LFO 3, and what we get is this. Okay, so that's the resulting signal. I'm going to change the zoom a bit, like let's say this, or let's jump to a different range. That's a bit tricky, sorry. Okay, so that's the result of modifier 2. What you can see is here the ratchet section, the first 4 notes of the arpeggiator would be a slightly higher signal. Then you would get a high signal for these 3 single notes following. Then you get a low signal, or in other words, you could not hear the ratchet if this is the level. Then again the 3 notes are high. Then again the ratchet is low or almost low. The 3 notes are high, and then we can hear the ratchet again with the first 4 notes of the arpeggiator. And this is exactly what we want to have. So we have modifier 1, which gives us a low signal exactly in these first 4 notes of the arpeggiator. And then we have modifier 2, which gives us a high signal in the first go of the ratchet and almost 0 or pretty much lower in the next 2 plays of the ratchet, and then again high. Let's apply it and let's check it out. So I'm moving to the modifier section. As I said, modifier 1 will be LFO 1, maximum maximum LFO 2, like this. And modifier 2 is modifier 1 combined with LFO 3, again with the maximum operation. And now we're going to use these 2 modulation sources as modulation sources for our oscillators, which means I'm going to apply modifier 2 to oscillator 1 to its level with plus 47, and in the second modulation slot modifier 1 to the level of oscillator 2, also with 47. Okay, at this point you can hear no difference, so I'm not playing the sound. First we have to decrease the level of both oscillators so that the final level is only controlled by the modulation slots 1 and 2. So let's go back to the oscillators and turn them all the way down. That's exactly what we wanted to achieve. So let's go back to the modulation slots and let me show you the result for each oscillator. So now you can only hear oscillator 1 by modifier 2. So only oscillator 1 gets the ratchet, and oscillator 2, let's check that out as well. Oscillator 2 gets no ratchet at all. And that's the trick. So let's turn oscillator 1 up again, and let's hear both in combination again. By using clocked LFOs with a square wave, combining them with the modifier operations and applying them to the loudness of the oscillators, we can increase the actual or the resulting length of our arpeggiator, because the arpeggiator says which notes are played. But we can also have an influence on which notes are played by muting some of the notes with our modulations, right? Now let's increase the complexity a bit, and let's use Modifier 3 for even more modulations. I want to use Modifier 3 for filter 1 cutoff to get this harsh and heavy sound, but only at certain points. Okay, let's go back to the software. Let's turn everything off here again, and I want to show you LFO 1 and 3 because these are the sources for our modifier 3. So we have LFO 1 and LFO 3, and we are combining them with, this time, the minimum operation. The resulting signal is this one, okay? So we have a repetitive pattern again. You can see it's repeating after a few bars, but a very very wild and quickly changing range of high and low signals. And this is going to control our filter 1 cutoff. So let's apply this modulation as well. Let's go to modulation slot 3 and use our first, of course, we have to do this in the modifiers. Sometimes I forget that I have to do it twice for you. The first time in the software and the second time here in the Blofeld. Okay, LFO 1, minimum, LFO 3. Let's go back to the modulation slot 3, and modifier 3 is the source, and we are applying this to filter 1 cut off with an amount of 32. We can also change this modulation a bit and increase the cutoff by using LFO3 directly as a modulation source for filter 1 cutoff, which gives us even more chaos. The original sound has a lot of delay and a lot of reverb. Of course, we can only apply reverb or delay, but not both at the same time. I choose to apply the clocked delay, So let's go to effect slot 2. By the way, if you don't need effect 1, you can simply bypass. And let's go to effect slot 2 and apply the clocked delay with an amount of 35, for instance, and change the setting to 1/4 dotted. Spread is -45 and feedback can be 60. So with a very creative use of LFOs, modifiers and the arpeggiator, we have been able to recreate something which was not meant to be fitting for the capabilities of this machine. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, make a like, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel to see even more Blofeld videos, and consider joining this channel as a channel member. In a membership you can get access to even more videos. You can get access to the Blofeld Modifier simulator software to make your own experiments, and even access to some of the patches which I prepared for you on this machine. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.